This lecture is going to focus on the types and the categories of plants that we commonly find on rangeland. So, plants are normally categorized according to a couple of different criterion, which includes their growth form, so how often they grow, if they're annual or perennial, their lifespan, what season they typically grow in, like a cool season or a warm season grass, their origin, and what they offer to the grazing animal. So, the four major growth forms that we find on rangeland, especially here in North America, are going to be grasses, grass like plants, forbs, and shrubs. And so, grass like plants differ from grasses in that their stem tends to be solid, whereas grass's stem tends to be hollow. We also see grass like plants um, more prevalent in riparian areas. And then, of course, forbs are going to be the flowering plants, and our shrubs are going to be the woody plants. So, grasses are absolutely one of the most important range plants that occur in the terrain, and they actually cover a really large percentage of the Earth's land surface. So, no matter what part of the world you're in, you can usually find some grasses associated with that rangeland type. Some of the characteristics of grasses are that they have joints that connect the leaves of their stems. The stems are going to be hollow between the joints or the nodes, and there tends to be two rows of leaves along the stems, and the venation of the grass leaf is going to be parallel, and that is going to change when we get to forbs, which tend to have more of a webbed vein structure. Our grass-like plants, again, they have solid stems, but they don't have any joints. So the solidification of the stem actually provides enough strength to the plant to keep it upright, that joints are not needed in these type of plants. Most of the time, the stems are going to be triangular in nature, and the veins, very similarly to grass-like plants, are going to be parallel. And the grass-like plants that we're going to see most often here in North America are sedges and rushes. And again, those are going to be in riparian areas or areas where there's going to be some additional standing water. Forbs, you guys know a lot about already. They're herbaceous, meaning that they have a lot of cellulosic material associated with their structure. And that is because they have very broad leaves and they have very showy flowers. And so, with forbs, especially here in California, the the plant is going to die within each individual year. So they're going to be annual in nature. And so the venation of forbs is much different than grasses, because forbs will actually have webbed or netted veins rather than parallel veins. And so many of the wildflower species that we see, especially here on California rangelands, and a lot of the weeds are going to be classified as a forb. Shrubs are the woody plant, and so their stem structure is going to have the lignin and the woody stem. And shrubs tend to have very broad leaves that can either have parallel veins or webbed and netted veins. So the lifespan of plants goes into the characterization of what they are. And so lifespan really refers to the length of time from germination of the plant to the death of the plant. So annual plants are going to live for one growing season and can occur either as winter or summer. And we may know those more specifically as cool season or warm season grasses and plants. Biennial plants are going to live for two growing seasons, and then perennial plants live from year to year, but go through periods of green up and then dormancy. So our winter annuals are going to germinate in the fall when the soil temperature gets cool. They're going to grow a little bit during the winter and then go dormant. Then in the spring, they're going to have massive growth and they're going to produce their seed. And then in the summer, the plant is going to die after the seed has been produced. Summer annuals are going to be a little bit different because they're going to germinate in the spring rather than the fall, grow during the summer, produce seed, and seed out in the fall, and then die in the winter. Biennials are plants that are going to survive 2 growing seasons. And so the first spring, they're going to germinate. They're going to produce a rosette and develop a root system during the summer and the fall. And then during that first winter, they're going to go dormant. But the roots are still going to stay alive. They're just going to be in a non-growth stage. And then the second spring, we're going to see the plant produce a flowering stalk. That flower is going to produce seed. And then in the second winter, that seed is going to be released into the soil or seed out, and the plant is going to die. The perennial plants look much different because they're going to go through periods of germination, flowering, seed production, a period of building up root reserves, and then they're going to go dormant. And when the second spring hits, they're going to go through that same process again. And so they go through this cyclic process without the plant ever dying or having less death events compared to the annuals and the biannuals. So perennials are characterized as going through periods of green up and dormancy. And a lot of perennial plants can actually live for several seasons, so 4, 5, 6, sometimes even 8 or 9 years, depending on the species of the plant and its location. Season of growth is going to be another characterization of rangeland plants. So our cool season plants are going to grow the most when the soil temperatures are cool, so spring and fall. They tend to flower mostly in late spring and early summer, and they're going to provide vegetation to the grazing animal in the spring and the fall at lower elevations. And then here in California, when we move up into upper elevations, into the intermountain valleys, those cool season grasses are going to produce forage during the summer. And so cool season plants are going to be adapted to cool and wet conditions, whereas our warm season plants are going to be adapted to hotter, drier conditions. And these plants are going to make most of their growth during warm summer periods, and they're going to flower out somewhere between midsummer and early fall. They're going to provide forage during the summer months. And so we see warm season grasses in irrigated pasture settings come on here in California in about mid-July when temperatures get really warm. So the origin and the nomenclature of the plant are going to be directly related. So we know that native plants are going to be plants that originated in North America. Introduced plants are those plants that were either intentionally or accidentally brought to North America, which are a lot of our annual grasses here in California. And then invasive species, also known as noxious weeds, are going to be plants that have been specifically identified as being noxious by different states and countries. And so if you're interested in looking at the noxious weeds on California's list, you can go to this website and it'll give you the whole list of everything that has been deemed noxious. The forage value is one of the most important characterizations of rangeland plants, and it refers to how many nutrients the plant will actually provide to the grazing animal. So high forage value plants are going to be very nutritious. They're going to taste good, so they're going to be palatable, and they're going to be producing abundant forage that can actually supply grazing forage for an animal. Plants of medium forage value are going to provide adequate but not superior nutrition. And low forage value plants do not produce adequate nutrition at all. And then the fourth category is going to be our poisonous plants. And so they may have high levels of protein and energy, but they will also contain compounds that are toxic or poisonous to the herbivore.